Welcome to the Keeping the Nostalgia Alive show. I am your host, Billy Powell, as you guys can see. Or if you're listening, to the left of me is Coach Shawn Martin, a basketball mind for years. I thought I actually knew a lot about this game of basketball from the state of Indiana, but I'm learning something new every day. I kind of refreshed myself with Shawn's background and everything, all the nets that he's been able to cut down or be a part of. And it's a pretty interesting story, plus with plenty of other basketball trivia and bits that he can share. You can go to keepingthenostalgialive.podbean.com. It's Keeping the Nostalgia Alive, all one word, .podbean.com. You can listen to all of our audio podcasts, or you can go to YouTube, type in the Keeping the Nostalgia Alive show, subscribe to our channel, and you'll be able to see all of our videos. Our last one we had of Coach Stafford Stevenson, who was a coach for the Evansville Aces and had to go to a recruiting trip rather than get on the plane. That was a very interesting interview. So check it out at keepingthenostalgialive.podbean.com or the Keeping the Nostalgia Alive show on YouTube. So we got that all out of the way. So we have Shawn Martin with us. Shawn, thank you for joining us. I hear that there's snow in Indiana, and I just took my trash out. I'll tell you again, like I told you last week or 2 weeks ago, I just took my trash out in my shorts here in Houston.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we'll make do. We got about we probably got about 4 inches of snow on the ground, which 1 to 2 inches of that is new today, and we're supposed to get another snowstorm Friday. So it's just we're in that pattern right now in Indiana, and you grew up here, you know what it's like.
Yes, I do. So what's your first memory of the game of basketball, or tell us how you fell in love with it?
Well, I think probably one of my first memories was probably in junior high. Actually, I grew up, the little town of Piermont, where I grew up, was like 8 miles away from Rossville, where I went to school at. So we didn't really go to a lot of games. My parents weren't into basketball and everything. They weren't from that area. So I think I was in maybe junior high basketball practice, and Larry Good, who was his son Brian, played at Wisconsin, and then now is a college coach in North Carolina. Larry was the head coach then. And so I'm there, and they're actually getting ready for, I think, regionals, because they had won sectional that year. And, just there at practice watching, and it was pretty wild. I think a kid, one of the players, got trapped in the corner and just threw up a shot at the basket, and it went in from half court. So that's kind of one of my first memories of high school basketball. And then when I got into high school, I kind of started following and got addicted.
And did you follow basketball through a local newspaper?
A lot of times, yeah. The Lafayette Journal and Courier did a nice job of covering the local teams and even some statewide teams, but and then blossomed out to where it was you get the Indianapolis Star as well. It's obviously newspaper. All media has changed greatly in the last probably 15 or 20 years. Now it's a lot more internet based and everything, and you can get on there. Sometimes the coverage is not as good as it was back then. I know I've got friends that that work in the sports reporting business, newspapers and online, and it's changed a lot from them. I know, like Sam King up here in Lafayette, he still covers games and everything, but their deadline for the print edition is like 7:00 at night. So there's no high school basketball, high school football, volleyball games. None of those things are done before their deadline. So he writes there, and then and does things on and posts things online like normal. But as far as the print editions, there's not much game coverage because it's always a day late. They do a lot of features now, a lot more features, I think, on different high school athletes and college athletes and stuff like that. So that's how it's kind of changed, and you kind of follow that.
Did you have any game as a kid?
No. I played up until my probably freshman year of high school. I'm like 5'8" and not very athletic. Although I did letter 4 years in baseball, varsity baseball. Don't get any bright ideas. I wasn't a major league prospect. We won 5 games in 4 years. That was those 5 games were 5 more than they won the entire 7 years prior to my becoming a freshman. And 2 of those years of the 7 years prior to me getting into high school, they didn't go more than 5 innings, meaning they got beat 10-run rule every single game for 2 years straight. So the basketball or the baseball program at Rossville at that time was not very good. Now they've since won a state championship and been in the state finals 3 times. So the program's changed dramatically since I was in.
So Rossville, when you were there, was one true state champion. And I know we'll probably have
I graduated in 1986. I was actually coaching at Central Catholic, which I'm sure we'll talk about here later. In 1998, when class basketball started, I actually was in school, kind of, probably the decade after the golden age of Rossville Hornet basketball. They went to the semi-state. The Lafayette semi-state 3 straight years, 69, 70, and 71. I know in 1971 they led the eventual state champion East Chicago Washington at I think halftime, and then they got into some foul trouble the second half and got beat. And that team is considered by many to be among the best that ever played in Indiana. They had 4 professional athletes start on that high school basketball team. So with Pete Turgovich and Junior Bridgman and Tim Stoddard that pitched for the Orioles in the World Series. So that was pretty, for a little tiny school, Rossville, which has probably 200, had about 200 students at that time in high school. That was a pretty big accomplishment.
The Rossville Hornets, give us an example of, from Indianapolis, how do you get to Rossville?
Okay, well, the easiest way would be to take I-65 up to Lafayette and then get off on State Road 26, and it's about 10 miles due east of Lafayette on State Road 26 from the interstate.
Now, during high school, what did you picture yourself, when you were singing in the mirror to Michael Jackson like I was, or Huey Lewis in the News, or Let's Go All the Way by Sly Fox? Boy, I just dated ourselves, because you graduated in 86, I graduated in 86. What did you want to do, or what did you foresee yourself doing?
Well, the ruination of my baseball pitching career was Kent DeColvey. He pitched for the Pirates there in 1979 with Willie Stargell and all them. I forget what the We Are Family Pirates and everything. Well, Kent DeColvey had that submarine pitch and everything, or where he dropped down, sidearm and everything. Well, I went out in the backyard, and that's how I threw. And so that kind of ruined my throwing motion for the rest of the night. I always had visions that I was going to be Pete Rose or a baseball star there, but my athletic ability and baseball ability kind of caught up with me fairly quickly. But I think every kid that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old at that time probably had those same dreams, whether it be baseball or basketball or football, or, football wasn't real big in Indiana then. That was prior to the Colts coming in 1984. And then I kid all the time. Rossville is still undefeated in football. We've never lost a game, and we never get any respect in the polls or anything. But that's just how it goes, because we don't have Rossville hasn't had football ever in their history. So so football was kind of out of the question for me, and then but probably baseball.
Did you ever practice your signature in classes, your autograph?
Yeah, some, but
Did you
I
ever write down how many home runs you were going to hit each year, and also how many RBIs you were going to have?
oh I've there's probably we've got our old house. I live in Lafayette now, but we've got our old house out in Piermont, and there's probably papers there where I went through an entire career and had my hits, home runs, batting average, stolen bases, everything. I like 25 years. I was a 25-year Major League Baseball Hall of Famer. Uh, I probably had 835 home runs or something like that, and so Barry Bonds, you can just kiss it.
I never went over the big ones like Hank Aaron or Babe Ruth, but I got
Right.
pretty close. My when I added all my stuff up, I got pretty close to 660, like right where Willie Mays was. But and
Right.
boy, I had that signature down pat, and I actually still use that signature. So that's one of the things I learned in high
Yep.
school is how to have a
Yeah.
pretty cool signature.
Well, I coached with Chad Dunway at Central Catholic, and his brother Todd played in the majors for 5, 6, 7 years, and actually has a World Series ring from the Florida Marlins in '97. Well, one time he was playing with the Cubs one year, and so I went up to Wrigley Field, and so I go down, and he of course knows me and everything. He played AAU basketball for me, and so I went down there and walked down towards the field, in the seats, and he's out there signing autographs. Todd was a utility player. M- most most people, if you didn't have the program and looked through the program, wouldn't even know who he was. But there was, there was 25, 30 kids there, all wanting him to autograph a baseball or a cap or something, their program. And so I walk up there, and he looks up there and says, "Hey, Shawn, how you doing?" And I mean, those kids just looked around at me like I was some kind of somebody special, and I would, he just knew me. So that was kind of a neat feeling to go up there. It gives you kind of an idea of what those guys, the lives that they kind of live.
Growing up as a kid, what was your favorite baseball team, or who'd you follow, or maybe possibly listen to on the radio or watch on TV? Who was your favorite team growing up in baseball?
Well, I was, my coming of age in baseball, little league, and all that kind of stuff was during the mid '70s. So the Big Red Machine was all I knew, and Johnny Bench and Joe Morgan and Pete Rose and Tom Seaver, and all of them were just incredible role models to me and idols. Um, and to this day, and I don't follow baseball as closely as sometimes I wish I did. But the Reds are my favorite team, and I'm living here in, we're 2 hours south of Chicago, so we get a lot of Cubs fans. Of course, there's Cubs fans everywhere, and then I've got a lot of friends that are Sox fans, and I've learned that I guess you can't be a Sox fan and a Cubs fan at the same time. You've got to be one or the other. It's sacrilegious to be one, to be both. So
Oh, I loved the going to Indianapolis Indians games with my
yeah,
grandfather. I loved the Cincinnati Reds, and you could pull, you pulled Dunwoody's name and being a utility player. There's Junior Kennedy that I knew everything
yep.
about, or some
Mhm.
players that really did. Ed Armbruster or Bill Plummer. Were all gods to me. Like these kids think they're gods to them. So loved baseball. So where did life take you after graduating from Rossville?
Well, I graduated in 1986, and then that summer, um, uh, some local people in Rossville started an AAU basketball team of kids that were coming out of their freshman year, and that happened to be the same age group as Damon Bailey and Eric Montross and Matt Waddell and all that group. So they had that was Municipal Gardens was who they played for, and they were pretty famous because I think that was around the time that Season on the Brink came out, and so Damon Bailey was kind of he just that's when Bob Knight had went and saw him in eighth grade, and it was a national craze and all that. So there was a lot of publicity over Damon Bailey and all that. Well, my friend Bill Walker had started this AAU team around his son, And so we got a group of mostly Lafayette area kids there. And so I helped out with that team, and then also coached like Little League baseball, and then, or I think it's Bronco age, which is like 12 years old. And then and I went like 0 and like 15 that year, and I've never coached baseball again. So that tells you I'm a front runner, I guess. But so I helped out with that basketball, and then I wound up, and Chad Dunwoody was actually on that AAU basketball team, and that's how I met him. And then we went on from there, and so I was with that, and we wound up finishing second in the state to Municipal Gardens. Led them at halftime. We played them 2 or 3 times, and I can remember it was at that was the year that the 3-point shot came into effect in high school basketball. We played Municipal Gardens up at Rossville, and Rossville didn't have a 3-point line at that point in time. So we're out there before the game with masking tape, putting tape around, making a 3-point line for the AAU game that night. And I don't know, we had a couple hundred people come to the game because they wanted to, there's a lot of IU fans, and they wanted to see Damon and all that, this and that. So, and then that got started, and then wound up, coaching my own AAU teams later on, and still helping with that. And then later on, and Chad got the Central Catholic job, and so then the rest is kind of history there.
So you've coached against, and do you know very well Coach Red Taylor?
I know him. I know of him a lot more than I know him. I've certainly met him a couple of times, and I know he's had some health problems here of late, and we're hoping he's doing better. I have his son on Facebook, so but no, Red was a legend in the AAU ranks, and you were somebody if you got on his teams, and you were a good player. So he had a bunch of them.
I know it's AAU basketball, and a lot of people think that AAU basketball was the beginning of demise of basketball. But, I think the beginning of the demise of basketball was cable TV and people having too many choices to choose from.
Yep.
But I believe Coach Red Taylor, not coaching high school basketball in Indiana, still would be a great addition to the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame.
I think you're right. And, I think, maybe we could talk to Chris May and see if we can facilitate that, maybe as a contributor or something like that, and all that. And, because an AAU basketball back then was a lot different than it is now. There's not as, don't get me wrong, he was well funded. But it's not anywhere like they're funded now. You've got 6-figure shoe contracts that are being thrown around there all over the place, and I've coached in 1 or 2 of those entities, and they're it can be big time.
Tell me, I told you guys at the beginning of the show that I thought I knew Indiana high school basketball, the game of basketball in the state of Indiana, but I don't. So I learned something new every day. Tell me about Dave Warland.
Okay, Dave Warland is probably one of the most genuine and good people, just people that you'll ever meet in your life. He is he's now the I guess principal at Indianapolis Cathedral. He's been down there for I've been gone from Central Catholic for 15 or 16 years now, and he went to Cathedral probably 2 or 3 years before that. So, but just a good guy. Just you could sit and have a beer with him. You could sit in church with him and talk. There, you could go to a basketball. He's a big Cubs fan. You could go to a Cubs game with him and just have a ball. And just a genuine good guy. Was a very good basketball coach, mostly more offensive minded than defensive minded. His teams were always pretty high scoring, but that was kind of the way that he came up. And I believe he was on the 73 team that broke Lafayette Jeff's like 29-year sectional streak. He was a starter on that team. Then he started his coaching career down in Washington Catholic. which is the Bird Cage, which is one of the most unique, neat gyms in Indiana. It's tiny. It only seats about 400 maybe, but it's a neat old gym, and that's where he started his high school coaching career, and then came to Central Catholic and led them until he turned the reins over to Chad Dunwoody in 2005 and 6.
And tell us that story about how you got involved with Lafayette Central Catholic, and tell us how you felt about single class basketball. It switches over to multi-class basketball while you're there. You guys win a state championship. How did you feel about it changing over? And take us through that becoming the first single A class champion.
Yeah, I should correct myself. It wasn't 2005 and 6. It was 1995 and 96. So I came when Chad got the job, and he was he had been he had started, he went to play basketball at Franklin College. And I don't know if that was where if Bob Lovell was coaching there or not at that time, but he went down there to play, and then got hurt, and then came back to Purdue. So like his junior year of college, he wanted to get into coaching. So he went around to all the schools and finally went to Dave Worland. And Dave Worland, he just wanted to be like, help out with the 8th grade team or whatever. And Dave Worland said, no, you're going to be my offensive coordinator, if you will, on high school. So he came up there, and then 2 years later, Dave turned the job over to him. So when Chad got the job, I'm a pipe fitter by trade. So I was actually an apprenticeship at that time. And how the apprenticeship works is you go to school 2 nights a week. And so I didn't know what nights of the week those were going to be. So I really couldn't commit to being a full-time assistant. So we agreed that I'd scout. So I'd go out and scout, because Fridays and Saturday nights I was off, and I could periodically go. So I went there. They gave me a form, and I just kind of went with it. I didn't really know what I was doing. I know who's a good shooter and all that, but I didn't know really a lot of the offenses and all that. But I developed a thing, and it wasn't long where Chad said, your scouting reports are better than any of the others that I had in high school and college and all this and that, because I guess I get wordy and all that. So I'd get pretty detailed on what a player could do and everything. So when my apprenticeship ended, it just coincided with the start of class basketball, and in 1997-98. So I take full credit for all the success that Central Catholic's had, because I came on as a full-time assistant at that time, and we went to four state finals in 6 years, and won 3 state championships in that time. But obviously, you and I are and probably more so me, because I've been up here and experienced the class basketball in Indiana. There's good points and bad points of it. I'm an old school guy. I love the one class tournament. Rossville, where I graduated from, was always in the Frankfurt sectional. So we played in the Case Arena, which was used in the movie Blue Chips. There, so it's like a mini Mackey Arena that Purdue plays in. It's got a metal roof. It's dome, and it's really loud. And I can still picture each of the 6 schools, because they always sat in the same exact sections every year. And you go up there, and you've got the green of Clinton Central, you got the blue of Tipton, and the blue of Frankfurt, you got the red of Clinton Prairie, and red of Rossville, and then the gold of Tri Central, and they're all seated in their same sections. And I can go into Case Arena right now and still picture that. And it was packed. That there's 5,500 seating capacity, and there was probably 6,000 people in there pretty much every year. So, but that was just kind of, it was so I had that, that in my mind, going in. And then it was different going into class basketball. You're going against different teams. You're in different venues. The first 2 years we went to Sheridan for our sectional at Central Catholic, and that's a big difference going from Crawley Center to Sheridan. to play there. And I remember the first year at Central Catholic, the kids when we were at Lafayette Jeff at Crawley Center, well, they'd come in up the top, and they'd circle the whole seating area of the upper level, and then they'd come down into their seats there. Well, they went to Sheridan, and they tried to do the same thing down there. They were waiting out in the hallway, and when the first game got over, I think it was Rossville and Clinton Central were playing that first game, and then we were going to play Clinton Prairie or somebody after that. And so they're waiting at the door. I'm back in the locker room. Well, they're waiting at the door. Well, the game gets over, and they just open the doors, and then they come in, and the players from the two teams are trying to get off the floor. And here's this big crowd of 300 or 400 Central Catholic fans and students, trying to circle the court and then go to their seats. And it created a big logistical mess. And I actually didn't get a tape from Clinton Central for the next, when they beat Rossville. Well, I wanted to get the tape of that game to watch, and so I didn't get that tape because our students went out. So it was different, and each of them have their good parts and their bad parts. I think the kids today miss out a lot on what it was like when we were growing up and going to games. And I know you had some success, as a player, at Broad Ripple, and it's neat to do it in the one class system, but it was neat to be able to have some success in a class system too.
Okay, I was a part of it. I don't know about the Clinton Central Bulldogs. If they blindfolded you and walked you in Case Arena, could you tell you were there by the smell? Did it have a smell to you?
They changed everything now. I mean, they got new seats and all that. The permanent seats are still there, obviously, but I imagine if I heard the horn and certainly their PA announcer and all that, and I could tell then. And their popcorn's pretty good there, so I could, you walk by the concession stand when you walk in, so I could probably and then you kind of walk up a little ramp, so it's I'd probably know where I was.
It's at Hinkle. I mean, you could blindfold me and walk me in. I could smell it. I know a lot of people used to say it was the pool, which has been taken out just recently, but I mean, it's just the smell. I mean, I could tell you where I was at just because of the smell. So, do you think a lot of people, it's like, oh, class basketball is wrong. Class basketball is wrong. Our school won a state championship. I can live with that.
Yeah,
I can live with class basketball.
Yeah, and I think you get that. I know, obviously Rossville had the experience of going to the semi-state championship game. I think 2 out of those 3 years. They were always very successful in the boys basketball. And then in 2002 they won a Class A state championship. And I think that was neat for those kids, certainly. And I don't think they think anything less of themselves for just being the Class A state champions and all that. And I think each of those teams has their own thing. Lagodi is the same way. Lagodi went to the state, to the Final Four in 2 years, 70 and 75, I believe, and then wound up having and then winning what was it, 2012 state championship. And and I have friends from Lagodi, and they were they were jumping up and down and had a big celebration. They went back into Lagodi that night, and the fire trucks were all out, and they had a big old parade and a big old pep session. So I think in the end, you celebrate the kids and the community having a great accomplishment, a great shared event that they'll remember for their lifetimes. I don't know that anybody really cares anymore. If you win, you don't think any less of your win than, man, I wish we would have played everybody. And but I think obviously the older generation, those that are older than us, probably, there's some nostalgia there that I think that maybe they long for that. And I think, there's always that. I'd love to see what a one class system would be. I would have loved to seen what some of our teams would have done. Some of my Central Catholic teams would have done in the single class. There's a couple of years that we got beat in like the regional round in Class A, where we might have made the semi-state in the single class. That was just the way it was. And that the Class A was just loaded when we were there. I mean, Tri Central one year, a couple of years, Tri Central had 4 Division I basketball players on their team in 1A in boys, and we played them in section. We beat them one year, and they beat us another year. And Rossville had tremendous teams when we were around there. Carroll never won a sectional, and they had incredible teams, incredible players on their teams. And we're all, Clinton Prairie had some good players. We're all just bunched in the same grouping, either sectional or regional. And, it was just, it was a survivor. Whoever survived had a really good chance to win state.
It's like we talked. There's a bunch of South Bend teams that probably could have won state championships. There's a bunch of Gary teams that could have won state championships. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, but they end up beating each other up all season long, and then you only have one person coming out of that area to continue on to try and go for that state championship or that banner.
Yeah, you have that now in the Indianapolis sectionals. Sectional 10 is brutal. And the girls' side, the girls' sectionals just ended. Zionsville sectional, they have 6 teams in that sectional. Well, the 6 teams in the Sagarin ratings, which I don't know how familiar everybody is with the Sagarin ratings, but it's a computer rating system that compares everybody to everybody, and 400 some schools. Well, the 6 teams in that sectional, they were rated overall in the state out of like 397 teams. They were rated between 5 and 15 overall in the state in that one sectional. Hamilton Southeastern, which is probably the best program out of that in the girls program there, they were the 15th rated team in the computer rankings, and they got beat first game, and yet they would win probably out of the other 15 4A sectionals, they would have won probably 13 of them, and probably pretty easily. And they were the 6th best team in that sectional. And you have that in sectional 10, sectional 11 or 12 with Ben Davis and all them and Avon. The Indianapolis area is just brutal with trying to get out of. You get out of there, you get to semi-state, and it's almost a relief.
So since we were on the Lagodi, you were mentioning Lagodi, tell us your travels and how you got to meet and what it was like, and about this guy. Coach Butcher.
We're talking about Jack Butcher?
Yes. Tell us about your travels and getting tape from him. What was that like sitting down to him? What hoops did you have to jump to get to him? Were you nervous when you were chatting with him? What was it like? What was it like going through that process and doing that?
Well, the first time I ever met Jack, now I'd seen a couple of Lagodi games just scouting, but I'd never obviously met him or anything like that. I just went and watched the game. 1998, we're getting ready to play Bloomfield in the state championship game of Class A, the first Class A state championship game. So we just won semi-state the Saturday before. Sunday, I'm on the phone. All over. This is before Huddle and all the internet based stuff. It's a breeze now to get tapes compared to what it was then. Well, so I'm setting up tapes on Sunday morning, afternoon. I'm calling all these other coaches, and so we talked about Dave Worland earlier. Well, Dave Worland obviously coached down in that area, coached against Jack Butcher several times when he was at Washington Catholic. So I called Dave and I talked to him, and he actually made the contact with Coach Butcher, and so we set it up that I was going to go down, I think Tuesday probably, and make a drive down there and get get tapes, and they actually put me in charge and in touch with Mike Wagner. Mike Wagner was going to give me the tape and all that and talk to me because Jack was still seething over losing in the semi-state, so he wasn't going to be very personable, I guess, and then most coaches aren't. They take losses very hard, but it wound up. So I get down to Lagodi and I'm talking to Mike Wagner, who Mike Wagner is actually the guy that coached them in the state championship when they won state championship in 2012, and is a good friend of mine. So I'm talking to him and he's looking for the tape. Well, Jack has it at his house. So we get in the car and we go to the butcher's house and knock on the door. And of course, then they come to the door. Mrs. Butcher comes to the door, and and because Mike had already called him and everything, they were expecting us. So we go in. Mrs. Butcher offers me a glass of lemonade, and so we sat down there, and I got to sit and talk to Jack Butcher for a half an hour over just basketball in general, and specifically Bloomfield and all that, who they just got beat by the couple days before that. So that was probably one of the neatest basketball experiences that I had. Most people don't get that. Whenever I go back to a Lagodi game, there's a lot of times if Jack is home, he'll be at the games, and he always sits towards the top across from the benches. And so you go up there and talk. I think it was like a great nephew or something like that, was a real good friend of mine, Scott Wagner. And actually Scott, yesterday, I think, was a 2-year anniversary where he passed away of cancer. So we were, I got to be around Coach Butcher a lot more than probably I normally would have, but he's a treasure, certainly deserves every accolade that he gets. And I think it was really, really neat how when J.R. Holmes was overtaking his coaching wins record, that Coach Holmes and Coach Butcher, they reached out to each other, and Coach Holmes really tried to include Coach Butcher in that ceremony. And then when he actually went over the record, Coach Butcher was there, and they had a nice ceremony. I think you can see it on YouTube, where they really honored Coach Butcher and his accomplishments. And it's just it's no different than when Coach Knight gets recognized, and I'm sure Coach Ariema, 30 years from now, when the next coach overtakes his record, or the lady at I guess the lady at Stanford's probably got the record now. But it's they have there's a deep respect for what those people have done.
Yeah, and I didn't know him. The Lagodi family has kind of embraced me, because I've done interviews with Coach Wagner. I've done interviews with Jim Trout. I've done interviews with Bill Butcher, and I've done Coach Kevin Biggs. But I guess Scott Wagner was just a huge, just super fan.
Yeah, and I think I made a post today that I think every school has their own super fan, but I'll guarantee you there's none that are any better than Scott was. I don't know. Most don't. There was a pre-Facebook. There's a website called Hickory Husker, and it had a message board on it, and and that's where I've met a lot of people, and Scott was one of the ones that was on there, and we all had none of us used our real names on that. We all had nicknames or whatever, and Scott was Norman Dale, and from Hoosiers fame, and he was always mouthy and arrogant, and just get out there, and he would talk. If the refs screwed Lagodi over the night before, then he was on there and just bashing them and everything. Of course, very few people knew exactly who he was early on, and then we got, then we all started meeting up and all that. And he was he was a great guy, but he bled black and gold from Lagodi. Now he worked in the X-ray field, I believe, in the Bedford Hospital, and of course Bedford being close proximity to Bloomington, mostly IU fans, and mostly Bedford fans, and so they would just give him the business about Lagodi, and usually around sectional time, they would come up and they would decorate his office at the Bedford Hospital. They deck it out in black and red, which is Bar Reeve colors, and that's Bar Reeve is like the that's like Purdue and IU. They Bar Reeve and Lagodi said 7 miles apart. That is, I cannot think of another high school rivalry anything like that. And I've been to that rivalry probably half a dozen times. That rivalry game. That's the only game those two teams play that week. Everything they used to have, and I think they still do. They have, the TV stations from Terre Haute and Evansville come up and they do features on both teams. They do radio things all week. Everything's a build up to that one game, and I've been to both places. Now, I would have went down this year to the new Bar Reeve gym, but I've been several times to that Cracker Box that used to be their gym, and then obviously Lagodi's got one of those sunken pit gyms like Newcastle. So it seats about 4,500. So when you went to Bar Reeve to a game, you had to get there. You better get there almost tip time of the JV game, or you're not getting in. Now Lagodi's has a lot more seating, but you have to get there early enough to park where you don't have to walk a mile.
So what's it feel like being a part of something that wins a state championship?
Well, I think, you get, and I know we talked earlier about, what you dream of and everything. And I think when you watch like the state finals and everything on TV and you hearing all that, and then going through the process, if you've never been, then it's kind of new. But you kind of get that idea in your mind that, man, this is what it'd be like. And it really is. It really is kind of that way with all the pomp and circumstance before the games. You walk out there. But once the ball's thrown up in the air and you're running up and down the floor, it's a normal basketball game. The only time you really understand it's not a normal basketball game is when you look up above the court and you see the video board up there, and maybe you got your picture on there, where they're taking a picture of the bench or whatever. And that's the only time you really know that it's not a basketball game. And then, of course, when the final horn sounds, then you've accomplished something. And I've been fortunate enough to win, to be a part of 3 winning state championship teams. And then I also was a part of a team that lost in a state championship game. And there's nothing better than winning a state championship, and there's absolutely nothing worse than losing a state championship game.
Where did you move on from Lafayette Central Catholic?
Well, we won. I always say this: we won 3 state championships, a state runner-up, 187 games in 10 years, and got fired because we didn't win enough. And we created a monster that we couldn't keep up, and that's you stay anywhere long enough, you kind of get the wrong kind of friends, and sometimes they can turn on you. So I basically took off a couple of years. Like I said, I'm a pipe fitter, so this is not my job necessarily where I'm depending on that to live. So I took a few years off, and then a pipe fitter friend of mine from Monticello, they needed a 6th grade girls coach, and I really wasn't doing much at that time, and I was actually working in Monticello. So I went up there and coached, and it wound up being the head coach, and he's still there now, Brad Bowsman. His daughter was the point guard on that team. And then they had a really good team for 12-year-old girls. And so I did that for a year. And I've coached everything from 12-year-old girls, 6th grade, to varsity boys and AAU basketball that, were almost college age kids. And the most challenging group that I ever coached was 12-year-old girls. 1 minute they're best friends, next minute they're ripping each other's eyeballs out. Same girls, same exact girls. But I love them to death. They were fun. I'm still friends with several of them. And I'm friends with several of their parents still. And we had good memories there. Well, I did that for 1 year. And then Chad Dunwoody's aunt is actually the guy that I coached with at Central Catholic. His aunt is Jan Connor, who's a Hall of Famer, and coached at Benton Central in Martinsville. And then she was a coach at Lafayette Jeff at that time. And she cornered me. We were in like a spring league at a basketball facility up here in Lafayette. And she cornered me one time and asked me why I wasn't coaching her 8th grade at Tecumseh Junior High. And I lived 5 minutes from Tecumseh at that time. And I really couldn't explain to her why I wasn't her 8th grade coach. So I became the 8th grade coach. And so I did that for 2 years there. The year, Jan's last year, which was my first year there, I helped with the girls varsity too, doing some scouting, and we won sectional that year. And then the next year, my friend from Rossville, Jeff Salmon, took over, and I stayed with the 8th grade. He offered me to go to the varsity and help out, but I had a really good group of 8th graders, I thought. So I stayed with them and basically ran the junior high program. And then my work kind of took me away from coaching. Like I said, I'm a pipe fitter. I went down to there was a $3.5 billion construction project down in southern Indiana, not far from Lagodi in Washington. So I went down there just to work, and wound up getting set up as the job steward on there. So then I became responsible for over 400 people from all 50 states and 5 or 6 different countries. So I did that for 3.5 years, and then came back and hung around. And then a friend of mine, Ron Best, whose son Tyler played for me at Central Catholic, and then his son Travis played at Frankfurt, and then went to Louisville and played at Purdue. So he got the girls' job at Frontier. So I went up and I was the JV coach and helped out with the varsity there. And then we left after 1 year there. And then Christoph Kendrick called me up when he got the Indianapolis Howe job, and he had played for me at Central Catholic, and wanted me to come down and help out there. So I went and helped out there, and so my coaching background has taken me from, I've coached at a 6A level school, I think it's like the 8th or 10th biggest school in the state, and Frontier is probably in the bottom 20 of enrollment in the state. And then I've coached at an inner city school, all black. I was the only white guy of the coaches and players on the entire team, freshman through varsity. And they treated me like gold. I had no, that was probably, that group of kids probably respected me as a coach more than probably any other group that I've had. I've coached girls and boys. I coached at a parochial school, in a 3A school that's kind of an upper middle class neighbor, city. So demographically, I've coached in about every conceivable demographic there is.
Give me a little bit of paragraph about these 3 names. Danny Shoecraft.
Tremendous shooter. He's a kid that I never thought, he always kind of liked to do things his own way and everything. When he came to us and everything, he never saw a shot that he didn't want to take. and it was actually kind of funny because that group of kids, that was one of the smartest basketball IQ groups that we ever had. And when they wanted Danny to shoot the ball, they would pass him the ball. When they didn't want Danny to shoot the ball, they didn't pass him the ball. And that's just how and they worked. That wasn't anything the coaches did. Now, ironically, I guess not ironically, because Danny knows the game, but Danny now coaches at Benton Central with another friend of mine there, and he Danny is a fantastic coach. He coached an 8th grade group last year that's now a really good freshman. Good. There's like 4 of those kids that are playing varsity as freshmen, and he went between A and B. I think went like 43-0 last year in 8th grade. Did a really nice job as a coach. He's a coach that he's a coach that he wouldn't have liked when he was a player, but he's a really good coach.
I read a quote where he said he'd probably be in jail if it wasn't for the game of basketball.
And Danny's a good kid, and I think the goodness in him would have won out. But I think all kids are just a few bad apple friends away from being in trouble, and I think that could be said for a lot of people.
Eric Williams.
Eric Washington or Williams?
Washington. I'm sorry. Yes.
Washington. Literally, maybe one of the most athletically gifted players that's ever played in Tippecanoe County, and that includes Purdue. I mean, that guy was off the charts athletically. There were times that we're waiting at a visiting team's. I think it might have been Clinton Prairie, or we were somewhere, and we were just outside the door of the locker room waiting for the JV game to get done, and they have one of their baskets off to the kind of above the locker room door, and that basket, I think it usually extends out. Well, they had, jacked it up against the wall, and it had to be up there 12 and a half, 13 feet above the floor. And Eric just jumps up there and touches the rim. I mean, it's just insane. And some of the obviously we taped our games and everything, and we had, in our highlight video, we had kind of a dunk montage of his there. And the people that went to the games didn't see anything. What we saw in practice was some of the dunks and stuff, and some of the things that he did just athletically was just, it was insane. Now, Eric was not just an athlete. He could step out to 3-point line. He was left-handed, or he is left-handed. I shouldn't say was. He's left-handed, and just the sweetest, smoothest stroke you ever saw in your life. Had he been, he was a kid that needed a lot of guidance, a lot of you had to have somebody oversee him. We had kids and a young coach that took him under his wing quite a bit and everything. Made sure he went to school there. He had some learning disabilities. He could literally read a page in a book and could not comprehend what he read. He could read a page and you'd ask him what he just read and he wouldn't have a clue. Now, if you sat there, now he got interviewed, he's a good player. So he got interviewed. He's very well spoken. He's not dumb. He's just, he's not able to comprehend what he reads. And so that was really the basis of the whole learning disability that we had with him. That basketball was a method for him to stay in school and get the help that he needed to get an education. And right now, he's got a good job. He's got a good family. He's a good guy from all I've ever found out. So it is a good thing, but just a fantastically talented basketball player.
Tyler Best.
Tyler Best is Tyler, and I use this story a lot. Tyler was about a BC student, not a great not great academically, not terrible. Most of that was, he probably didn't work as hard on his studies. I didn't work as hard on my studies when I was in school either. Now we also had Russell Trudeau. Russell was a 4.0 student. Now we could have, and at Central Catholic, we had, our playbook was literally 50 plays, offense, defense, out of bounds plays, or zone offense, man offense, specialty plays, out of bounds plays. It totaled over 50. Okay. Tyler knew every single position, all 5 positions of every single one of those plays, and he could tell. He'd be out there directing everybody else on the court as to where they were supposed to be and what they were supposed to do. Russell, we'd call a play out, and you could literally see him. He'd be out there, and he's like drawing it up on his hand to figure out, and then Tyler would go, Russell, just go screen away, and then come back to the ball, or something like, and so it was amazing. Tyler, from a basketball IQ standpoint, is off the charts. And he was if he could have developed his shot a little bit better than he was, he probably could have played NBA. I mean, he was athletically, he was probably limited in that regard. He certainly wasn't athletic like Eric Washington, but he had the knowledge and the skill level. His skill set as a post player was pretty phenomenal. And I know his freshman year, we struggled at guard a little bit, and there for probably the last half of the season, he would be bringing the ball up the floor as a point guard, 6'9" point guard in high school as a freshman, and did a real good job of it. So we went to the state finals with him as a freshman, basically point guard. So he's, but like I said, just off the charts basketball IQ. He's a successful businessman now. He works with the former Purdue player Brad Miller and some other people, and they're pretty successful in what they do.
And Trudeau's father also played for Purdue, right?
Yeah, Doug did play at Purdue, mid to 60s, I think, and was a pharmacist, and then sadly, I don't know, probably 10, 12 years ago, passed away of a heart. I think he had a bad heart. And I remember going to Doug's funeral, and one of the eulogizers was Matt Painter, the Purdue coach.
Yeah, Coach Dave Shellhouse was. He
Yes.
had commented a couple times of how close he was to Doug Trudeau.
Yeah, Doug was a great guy, and I've had the opportunity to be around Dave Shellhouse several times too. And I know one time I was sitting at a table at a luncheon with Dave Shellhouse, Jerry Hoover, and Frank Kendrick, and there was 4 other of us there. One of them was Chris Byers, who had just coached the Warren Central team to an undefeated state championship. And the 4 of us others, we sat there and didn't say a word for an hour and just listened to them tell story after story after story. It was great fun.
Well, we had when Coach Shellhouse came to Houston for the Final Four in 2016. We went to a church outing which was a barbecue dinner, and one of our neighbors, who's 83 years old, but as sharp as a tack, he went with us, and we were sitting at the table eating our barbecue, and Fred our neighbor was talking about how when he was in Terre Haute making servicing potato chip bag making capabilities, he said, but when he said, yeah, I lived in Terre Haute for a year, I just recalled Dave Shellhouse's face and his why.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way he said why would you choose to live in Terre Haute was hilarious. But I can just imagine the oxygen level with those 4 guys. You're just taking it all in and listening to their stories.
Yeah, it was incredible. So, yeah. And I've gotten, now I kind of write for I write every 2 weeks I write a column for a thing. So I get around to different basketball events and everything, and try to try to keep there. But I tell you what, some of those older guys are they're just fun to be around. Jerry has a real dry sense of humor, and you think he's being real super serious, and he'll say something, and then he'll just kind of look and get that little grin on there. And Frank Kendrick is just an electric personality, and he could be. And I've always said what made Frank such a great recruiter in college, and he was probably as good as anybody when he was at Purdue. Was Frank could go into a house of an inner city people, or he could be in a house of multimillionaires and feel at home and feel comfortable talking to them at their level. And I think that's what allowed him to be so good as he was.
Shawn, who do you say you write stuff for?
Yeah, I write a column for it's XL High School Sports, and mainly it's just from my basketball background. I get to pick kind of the topics that I write, and then I every once in a while do a podcast. I've also done we did some video casting of somewhat involved with the new semi-pro basketball league that's starting here in Indiana, and we did some of their tryout combines is what they called them. So we just sat there and talked basketball for an hour and a half or so and interviewed people. So it's just fun to, kind of be around. And, I know my next column comes out Friday morning, and it actually is kind of the Super Bowl. And then kind of my experience with one of my state championship game experiences that was similar to the Super Bowl, I thought. So people seem to like it. And so Steve Strimming asked me to do it. So I've kind of been doing that, and we have fun doing it.
And Kent Benson is associated with that too, right?
Kent Benson is the founder of the of that Hoosier Hardwood Basketball Association. Yeah, so I've got to hang around with Kent for last several months. We've been 3 or 4 times together, different places, and then there's a gentleman by the name of Bob Petty that's also involved. That's been with NBA teams and all through. He's been at every level from grassroots through high school to the NBA. So it's a pretty well thought out thing. They're going to start playing in March, I believe. We've got 4 teams here in Indiana, and some good players from Butler and Indiana State and Evansville, and some really good NAIA players. Several players that have played in the NBA G League, the G League, and pretty high level of basketball.
Hoosier Hardwood Basketball Association?
Yes.
I can't believe I got that off the first bat.
Hey, there you go. Yeah. So, but Kent and Bob started that. They and it's not, I've told people it's not something that, few guys just sat across, a couple beers just talking and hey, this would be fun to do. They put a lot of work and effort, and they've generated some funds to get it going. It's got, obviously, starting out in a pandemic, it's not going to be easy, but I think they've got some really good people, good players that are, Kellen Dunham, who played at Butler, is just a fantastic young man. And he's kind of the face of the league right now. There's a guy that's from Indianapolis, Washington, that actually played at a small school in St. Louis, and he's just a fantastic point guard. He could play for me any day of the week. Joseph, I'm going brain dead on his last name now, but he's fantastic. They got some really good players. I think there are going to be some neat personalities that people in those communities will. I think they're in the Anderson Pendleton area is one team, Newcastle's one team, Terre Haute's one team, and Bedford's another team.
Shawn Martin, we could probably do another show called Stories from 94 feet or 92 feet, however long that basketball court is. 94 feet?
94 feet in college and pro. 84 in high school.
84?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's why there's a lot of people talking that because the NCAA is going to be entirely hosted in there. That we could go to Newcastle, we could go to here and there. The high school courts are 10 feet shorter, and there's no way really easy to alleviate that.
Well, I thank you so much. This was kind of a whirlwind podcast. We went long as normal because none of us can shut up about the game of basketball. But I appreciate it, and I hope everybody enjoys it. And your thing comes out on XL. Is it a website? Is it on Facebook?
Yeah, it's xlhsports.com.
Look at his shirt, people, and focus in on that, and you can go to that.
Yep.
Shawn Martin, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Yeah, and it's Musings of a Hoopster right there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I think everybody enjoy this. We'll have to do get together and do a part 2 and do stories and nostalgia from it.
Sounds good.
All right, Shawn, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.